Imagine this. You wake up in a hospital bed. Your head is throbbing and the lights are too bright. A man is sitting beside you, tears streaming down his face, holding your hand like it's the most precious thing in the world. He's saying your name over and over, telling you he loves you, telling you everything's going to be okay. But you have no idea who he is. This stranger claims to be your husband. He shows you photos of a wedding you don't remember. He tells you stories about a life you never lived. He looks at you with such desperate love that it frightens you because when you look back at him, you feel nothing. No recognition. No memory. Nothing. How do you tell someone who loves you completely that to you, they're just a stranger? How do you explain that 5 years of your life, 5 years you apparently spent building a life together, are just gone, erased like they never existed? This is the story of Paige and Leo. A love story that had to start twice. A question with no easy answer. If someone forgets they love you, can they fall in love with you again? Or are some memories, once lost, gone forever? What if the person you were, the person who made those choices, who fell in love, who built that life, what if that person is gone? What if you're someone different now? Do you owe it to this stranger to try to become who you used to be? Or do you have the right to choose a different path? This is a story about memory and identity. About whether love is something we remember or something we choose. About the devastating fragility of the human mind and the resilient power of the human heart. So let me take you back to where it all began. Before the accident. Before the forgetting. Before everything fell apart. Let me show you what was lost, and what two people did to try to find it again. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you. Chicago in autumn was magical. The leaves turned gold and red, the air grew crisp, and the city seemed to shimmer with possibility. This is where Paige and Leo found each other, in a small art gallery on a Thursday evening, both of them alone, both of them searching for something they couldn't quite name. Paige came from money, real money. The kind that came with expectations, obligations, and a life mapped out before you could even walk. Her father was a successful attorney, her mother a socialite who organized charity galas and country club events. Paige had attended the right schools, joined the right clubs, dated the right men. She was engaged to David, a lawyer from an equally prominent family. The wedding was planned for the following spring. Everything was perfect. Except Paige felt like she was suffocating. She had a secret, one she barely admitted to herself. She hated law school. She hated the endless memorization, the competitive atmosphere, the dry discussions of precedents and statutes. What she loved was art. Always had. As a child, she'd spent hours drawing, painting, creating. But her parents had dismissed it as a hobby, nothing serious, certainly not a career. Artists starve, darling, her mother had said with a patient smile. You're too smart to throw your life away on something so unstable. So Paige had buried that part of herself. She'd become who her parents wanted her to be. She'd gotten engaged to David because he checked all the boxes: successful, handsome, appropriate. She told herself she was happy. She told herself this was what she wanted. But that night in the gallery, standing in front of a painting that seemed to scream with color and emotion and life, Paige felt something crack open inside her chest. That one speaks to you. She turned to find a man standing beside her. He wasn't like the men in her usual social circle. No designer suit, no expensive watch, no carefully styled hair. He wore jeans, a worn leather jacket, and had this energy about him, like he was fully present, fully alive in a way she'd never felt. It does, Paige admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. Feels free. His name was Leo. He worked at a recording studio, produced music for independent artists. He loved jazz and old vinyl records and believed that art, real art, was about truth, not profit. He asked her questions no one had ever asked her before. What did she want? What made her come alive? If she could do anything, what would it be? They talked for 3 hours. Then they went for coffee. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a walk through the city at midnight, both of them talking like they'd known each other forever. Paige knew she should go home to David. She knew she should stop seeing this stranger. But she couldn't. For the first time in her life, she felt like herself. Over the next few months, Paige lived two lives. During the day, she attended law school, had lunch with her mother, planned wedding details with David. At night, she met Leo. They'd go to small music venues, explore hidden parts of the city, talk about dreams and fears and all the things Paige had never voiced out loud. Leo encouraged her to draw again. She started carrying a sketchbook, filling pages with images that came from somewhere deep inside. Leo would look at her work and say, "This is who you are. This is real." The decision to leave her old life wasn't sudden. It built slowly, like pressure in her chest, until one day Paige realized she couldn't breathe anymore in the life she'd been living. She couldn't marry David. She couldn't become a lawyer. She couldn't keep pretending. Breaking off her engagement was the hardest thing she'd ever done. David was shocked, hurt, angry. "Is there someone else?" he demanded. "There's someone I need to be," Paige answered. "And I can't be her in this life." Her parents were devastated. Her father stopped speaking to her. Her mother cried and begged her to reconsider. "You're throwing your life away," she pleaded. "For what?" "Some romantic fantasy that won't last." But Paige knew it was more than romance. It was about finally being honest with herself, finally choosing her own path instead of following someone else's map. She left law school. She left her parents' mansion. She moved into a tiny apartment with Leo, and for the first time in her life, Paige felt like she could breathe. She enrolled in art classes at the institute, discovered she had a gift for sculpture. Working with metal and clay, creating three-dimensional forms, felt like speaking a language she'd always known but never been allowed to use. Her instructors were impressed. Other students sought her advice. She was good at this, really good. Leo was building his recording studio, working long hours to make it successful. Money was tight. They ate cheap takeout and bought clothes from thrift stores. Paige's parents had cut her off financially, hoping she'd come crawling back. But she never did. Because even though they struggled, even though they worried about making rent, even though they had almost nothing, they had each other. And for the first time in her life, Paige was genuinely happy. Leo proposed on a bridge in the park at sunset. He didn't have a ring, couldn't afford one, but his words were more valuable than any diamond. "I don't want to own you or possess you," he said, taking both her hands. "I just want to choose you. Every single day, despite any difficulty, despite what anyone says, I want to wake up and choose you. And I want you to choose me back." That's what marriage should be, a daily choice to love and be loved. "So, Paige, will you choose me?" Through tears, Paige said yes. They got married in a simple ceremony with just their closest friends. Paige wore a vintage white dress she'd found at a consignment shop. Leo borrowed a suit. They wrote their own vows, promising to support each other's dreams, to be honest even when it was hard, to choose each other every day. For 5 years, they kept that promise. They built a life filled with music and art and love. They danced in their kitchen. They stayed up late talking about everything and nothing. They supported each other through creative blocks and financial stress and all the regular challenges of life. Paige's sculpture work started getting noticed. She had pieces in local galleries. She was working on a series for a major exhibition. Her talent was undeniable. Leo's studio was becoming successful. More artists wanted to work with him. He had a reputation for understanding music in a deep, intuitive way. They were happy. They were building something real. And then came that February night. The snow. The movie theater. The drive home. The accident that changed everything. The impact of the truck hitting their car seemed to happen in slow motion and in an instant simultaneously. The terrible sound of crunching metal. Paige's scream. Then Leo's voice, panicked and desperate. "Paige! Baby, stay with me." But Paige couldn't stay. Darkness swallowed her whole. When she woke up 8 days later, Leo was there. He'd barely left her bedside. He was unshaven, exhausted, his eyes red from crying. The moment her eyes opened, his face transformed with relief and joy. "Paige! Oh, thank God. You're awake. Can you hear me?" "I'm here." "I'm right here." Paige blinked slowly, confused. The lights were too bright. Her head felt like it was splitting open. A man she didn't recognize was holding her hand, crying, calling her name like she was the most important person in the world. Doctors rushed in. They asked her questions. Do you know your name? Do you know where you are? What's the last thing you remember? My name is Paige, she answered, her voice weak and scratchy. I'm in a hospital, and I was studying for law school exams. I think I fell asleep at the library. The doctors exchanged glances. The man, the stranger, went pale. Paige, the doctor said gently, what year do you think it is? It's 2007. Late 2007, I think? October or November? It's February 2012, the doctor corrected her softly. Paige's heart began to race. That couldn't be right. That was impossible. She'd lost 4 years? 5 years? Do you know who this is? The doctor gestured to the man holding her hand. Paige looked at him, really looked. He had kind eyes, currently filled with tears. He had a nice face. But she'd never seen him before in her life. I don't know, she whispered. Should I? The stranger's face crumbled. Paige, it's me. It's Leo. Your husband. The word didn't make sense. Husband? I'm not married, Paige said, her voice rising with panic. I'm engaged to David. Where is David? Why is this man saying he's my husband? Over the next several hours, through tests and scans and careful questions, the doctors determined what had happened. The accident had caused severe trauma to Paige's brain. She had retrograde amnesia. She'd lost the memories of the last 5 years. Everything from 2007 to 2012, gone. Erased. The neurologist was honest with Leo. Sometimes these memories return. Sometimes they don't. There's no way to predict. The pathways in her brain that stored those memories are damaged. They might rebuild, or they might not. But there's a chance? Leo asked desperately. There's a chance she'll remember? There's a chance, the doctor confirmed. But you need to prepare for the possibility that she never will. Leo couldn't accept that. Wouldn't accept that. The woman he loved was right there, alive, awake. He just needed to help her remember. They'd fallen in love once. Surely they could do it again. But when he tried to talk to Paige, she looked at him with fear and confusion. To her, he was a stranger claiming an intimate connection she didn't feel. It terrified her. Her parents arrived. People she actually recognized, actually loved. She clung to them, crying, asking them to explain what had happened, why a stranger was claiming to be her husband. Paige's father, a man who'd never approved of Leo, saw an opportunity. His daughter was back, free from the foolish choices she'd made. He could protect her now, guide her back to the life she should have had. Give her space, he told Leo coldly. You're upsetting her. She doesn't know you. She's my wife, Leo protested. In name only, Paige's father said. She doesn't remember marrying you. Are you going to force a woman who doesn't know you to come home with you? What kind of man would do that? Leo knew he had a point. How could he bring Paige home to an apartment she didn't remember, force her to live with a man she didn't recognize? It would be traumatic for her. But letting her go felt like dying. Paige was released from the hospital into her parents' care. She moved back into her childhood bedroom in their mansion, surrounded by things she remembered. Her trophies from high school, photos from college, her old books and clothes. This felt safe. This felt real. The apartment she'd apparently shared with Leo felt like a stranger's life. But Leo wasn't ready to give up. He asked Paige to meet him, just once, so he could explain. Reluctantly, she agreed. He brought their wedding album. He brought photos from their 5 years together. He brought videos, cards, notes she'd written him. He laid it all out, showing her the evidence of their life. This is us on our wedding day, he said softly, pointing to a photo. You wore a vintage dress. We got married in that little park near the river. You wrote vows that made everyone cry. You said you'd never felt free until you met me. Paige stared at the photo. The woman in the picture looked happy, radiant even. But it was like looking at a stranger wearing her face. This is our apartment, Leo continued, showing more photos. You turned the spare room into an art studio. You were working on sculptures. You're incredibly talented, Paige. I don't do sculpture, Paige said automatically. I was in law school. You left law school, Leo explained gently. You decided to pursue art instead. It was your passion. None of this made sense to Paige. Leave law school? Pursue art? Her parents would never have allowed that. And why would she? Art wasn't a career, it was a hobby. Leo showed her more. Photos of them at concerts, on road trips, cooking together, laughing together. In every photo, they looked deeply in love. But Paige felt nothing. No spark of recognition, no buried memory surfacing. Just confusion and discomfort. I'm sorry, she said finally. I don't remember any of this. I don't remember you. Leo's face showed his heartbreak, but he tried to hide it. That's okay. We can make new memories. Can I take you somewhere? Show you our life. Paige agreed, though she wasn't sure why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe guilt. Leo took her to their apartment first. Walking into it felt surreal. The space was small, cluttered with art supplies and music equipment. So different from her parents' organized, pristine mansion. In the spare bedroom, her supposed art studio, dozens of sculptures filled the shelves. They were beautiful, complex, professional-level work. Paige touched them in awe. I made these, she asked. You did, Leo confirmed. You were preparing for a gallery exhibition. One large piece was covered with a sheet. Leo pulled it back carefully. It was a sculpture of two intertwined figures, abstract but clearly representing two people in love. The metal curved and connected in ways that suggested unity, passion, belonging. A small plaque read, "Chosen, for Leo, who chose me every day." Paige stared at it, feeling something twist in her chest. This wasn't just art. This was love captured in bronze. Over the following weeks, Leo tried everything. He took her to places that had been meaningful, the gallery where they'd met, the park where he'd proposed, the restaurant where they'd had their first date. He introduced her to their friends, who hugged her and cried and told her how much they'd missed her. Everyone had stories about her, the her she'd been. They talked about her laugh, her kindness, her talent, her passion for life. They showed her photos and videos. They tried to fill in the gaps in her memory. But it didn't work. Paige remained disconnected from it all, watching her own life like it was a movie about someone else. The worst part was seeing how hard Leo was trying. He was patient, creative, devoted. He recreated their first date exactly, hoping some detail would trigger a memory. He played her favorite songs. He cooked her favorite meals. He told her stories about their life together, funny ones, romantic ones, ordinary ones that showed the depth of their connection. Nothing worked. Paige felt guilty. She could see that Leo was a good man, that he genuinely loved her. But she couldn't manufacture feelings she didn't have. When she looked at him, she saw a kind stranger, not a husband. Meanwhile, her parents were actively working to pull her back into her old life. They told her she'd made a mistake leaving law school, that she could fix it, that her future could still be what it was supposed to be. David reached out too. Her former fiancé said he still cared, that he'd never stopped hoping she'd come back. I made mistakes, he admitted. I wasn't attentive enough, wasn't there for you. But I've changed. Give me another chance. David was familiar. He was handsome, successful, appropriate. Dating him felt comfortable in a way being with Leo didn't. She started seeing David again. Coffee dates, then dinners, then social events with both their families. Everyone was pleased. Her parents, his parents, their social circle. It felt like pieces clicking back into place. But something was wrong. When David kissed her, gently, respectfully, Paige felt nothing. It was pleasant but empty. No passion, no excitement, just nothing. She thought about the sculpture she'd made for Leo. About the way the metal pieces connected, suggesting two people who fit together perfectly. She'd never felt that with David even now. Leo heard through mutual friends that Paige was seeing David. The news broke him. He'd been patient, hopeful, trying to give her space while also showing her their life together. But how could he compete with her entire past, with parents who wanted her back, with a former fiancé who represented everything familiar? One night, alone in their apartment, Leo sat surrounded by Paige's sculptures and their photos. He twisted his wedding ring, wondering if he should just let her go. Maybe this was the universe telling him it was over. Maybe he was being selfish, holding on to something that only existed in his own memory. He thought about what made love real. Was it memory? Was it choice? If Paige couldn't remember their love, did it still exist? Or had the accident erased not just her memories but the relationship itself? His friend Kyle found him there, staring at nothing. "You look like hell," Kyle said bluntly. "She's seeing David again," Leo said numbly. "Her ex-fiancé." "So fight for her," Kyle urged. "That's your wife, man. Your soulmate. Don't just give up." "I'm not giving up," Leo said tiredly. "I'm trying to do what's right for her. She doesn't remember me. She doesn't love me, not anymore. Maybe I need to accept that." "Love isn't just memory," Kyle argued. "It's choice. You two found each other once. Help her find you again." But Leo was exhausted. Exhausted from hoping, from trying, from loving someone who looked at him like a stranger. He made a decision. The next day, he called Paige and asked to meet one last time. They sat in a quiet coffee shop, and Leo said the hardest words he'd ever spoken. "I've been thinking about everything," he started, his voice steady despite the pain. "I've been asking you to remember something you can't remember. I've been trying to make you feel things you don't feel. That's not fair to you." Paige looked surprised, almost panicked. "Leo, you have a life you remember," he continued. "Parents who love you, David, opportunities for your future. That's real to you in a way our life together isn't. And I've been trying to force you into a life that must seem crazy, must seem like fiction." "You haven't forced anything." "I have," Leo interrupted gently. "Every time I show you pictures or tell you stories, I'm asking you to be someone you can't remember being. I'm asking you to feel things you don't feel. That's not love, Paige. Love should be free, not obligated." Tears filled Paige's eyes, though she didn't understand why. "So I'm letting you go," Leo said, his voice breaking. He took off his wedding ring, the first time since their wedding day, and placed it on the table between them. "You need to choose your own path. Not the path I want or your parents want. Whatever feels true to you." Paige stared at the ring, feeling something crack inside her chest. She should feel relieved. This was what she wanted, freedom from this stranger's claims on her life. But instead she felt loss. Deep, wrenching loss for something she couldn't even name. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I can't remember. I wish I could be the person you loved." "You are that person," Leo said, tears in his eyes. "You just don't know it yet. But you need to discover it yourself, not because I tell you stories about who you were." He stood up, leaving the ring on the table. "Take care of yourself, Paige. I hope you find what you're looking for." Then he walked away. Paige sat alone, tears streaming down her face, staring at the wedding ring. Freedom should feel good. Instead, it felt like she'd lost something irreplaceable. With Leo out of the picture, Paige threw herself fully into her old life. She moved permanently back into her parents' mansion. She attended social events with David. She started making plans to return to law school. Her mother was thrilled. "I knew this phase would end eventually," she said, planning engagement parties. "You're yourself again." But was she? Paige went through the motions. She let David take her to expensive restaurants and charity galas. She smiled for photos with her parents' friends. She discussed law school applications. Everything looked perfect from the outside. Inside, she felt hollow. David proposed again, properly this time, with a massive diamond ring at an elegant restaurant full of their families and friends. Everyone watched expectantly as he got down on one knee. "I love you, Paige," David said. "I never stopped loving you. Marry me. Let's build the future we were always meant to have." Paige looked at the ring sparkling under the lights. At David's confident smile. At her mother crying happy tears. At all the people watching, waiting for her to say yes. This was everything she was supposed to want. "Can I think about it?" she asked. The restaurant went silent. David's face showed disappointment, though he tried to hide it. "Of course," he said stiffly. "Take your time." But he was hurt. Her parents were confused. Everyone expected an immediate yes. What was wrong with her? Paige didn't know. David was perfect on paper, successful, attractive, from the right family. They had similar backgrounds and goals. They fit together socially. She should be ecstatic. But she felt nothing. No excitement, no joy, no certainty. Just emptiness. She found herself thinking about Leo constantly. Wondering if he was okay. Wondering what he was doing. Wondering if he'd moved on. One afternoon, unable to stop herself, Paige drove to the apartment she'd shared with Leo. She still had the key. She let herself in quietly, half hoping and half fearing he'd be there. The apartment was empty. Silent. But it was exactly as she remembered from her previous visit, cluttered with music equipment and art supplies, photos on the walls, evidence of a life lived with passion rather than propriety. Paige walked through slowly, touching things, trying to feel some connection. In her art studio, she found the sculptures she'd made. Dozens of them. Each one showed remarkable skill and emotional depth. She picked up a small bronze piece, turning it over in her hands. Had her hands really created this? The woman who'd made these had been talented, passionate, fearless. That's when she found the journal. It was tucked in a drawer beneath some sketches. A simple notebook filled with her handwriting. Paige opened it, her heart pounding. The entries dated back 5 years, starting shortly after she'd left David and her old life. She read slowly, each page revealing more about the woman she'd been. Left law school today. Officially. Dad won't speak to me. Mom keeps crying. But when I walked out of that building for the last time, I felt lighter. For the first time in my life, I'm making my own choices. Started sculpture class. The instructor says I have natural talent. Leo came to the studio tonight and just watched me work. He said watching me create was like watching someone speak their native language. I've never felt so seen. We're so broke. Ate ramen again for dinner. But Leo made me laugh so hard I couldn't breathe, and we danced in our tiny kitchen to an old jazz record. I've never been this happy. This is what love should feel like. Chosen, not obligated. Mom called today. She said I threw my life away, that I'll regret leaving David. But how can I regret finally being honest with myself? How can I regret choosing love over expectation? Leo and I had a fight about money. It was bad, we both said things we didn't mean. I almost called my parents to ask for help, which would mean admitting they were right. But then Leo apologized and we really talked and we worked it out. This is what partnership means. Not perfection, but choosing each other even when it's hard. Gallery accepted 3 of my pieces. I'm going to be in a real exhibition. Leo made me dinner to celebrate, burnt the pasta, but it was perfect anyway. He believes in me more than I believe in myself sometimes. Page after page revealed a woman who was happy, fulfilled, living authentically despite enormous pressure to conform. A woman who'd found her passion and her person. Paige sat on the floor of her studio, surrounded by her own creations, reading her own words, and felt like she was meeting someone she desperately wanted to know. This woman in the journal was brave. She'd walked away from security and approval to build a life that felt true. She'd faced disapproval from her family but stayed true to herself. She'd struggled financially but found richness in love and purpose. And she'd loved Leo. Not the polite, appropriate love Paige had felt for David, but deep, passionate, chosen love. Every entry made that clear. Paige found photos tucked in the back of the journal. Candid shots of her and Leo. In every single one, they were touching, hands clasped, arms around each other, foreheads pressed together. The intimacy was obvious. The joy undeniable. She compared these photos to the formal pictures from her engagement to David. In those, they stood side by side, smiling for the camera, barely touching. They looked like business partners, not lovers. One photo in particular struck her, Paige and Leo in their tiny kitchen, dancing. She was laughing, head thrown back, his arms around her waist. They looked completely present, completely happy, completely in love. When had David ever made her laugh like that? Paige thought about the proposal David had just made, the expensive ring, the public setting, the expectation that she'd say yes immediately. Then she thought about Leo's proposal as described in her journal. Leo proposed today. On the bridge in the park at sunset. He didn't have a ring, we can't afford one, but his words were more valuable than any diamond. He said he didn't want to own me or possess me. He just wanted to choose me. Every day, despite any difficulty, despite what anyone says, he wanted to wake up and choose me. And he wanted me to choose him back. I said yes before he could even finish asking. That word appeared over and over in her journal entries. Leo chose her. She chose him. Every single day, they chose each other. David hadn't chosen her. He'd been expected to marry her. Their engagement had been the logical next step in a carefully planned social progression. When she'd left him, he'd been hurt not because he'd lost his soulmate, but because his plan had been disrupted. Leo had chosen her despite having every reason not to. Despite her parents' disapproval. Despite the financial struggle. Despite coming from completely different worlds. He'd chosen her because of who she was, not what she represented. And she'd chosen him for the same reason. Sitting in her studio, surrounded by evidence of that choice, Paige felt something shift inside her. She still couldn't remember the last 5 years. The memories were still gone, maybe forever. But she could see the truth in her own work, her own words, her own smile in photos. She could see that the woman she'd been had found something real, something precious, something worth fighting for. And she'd given it up. She'd let her old life, the safe, familiar, approved life, pull her back. She'd been so focused on the fact that she couldn't remember, she'd forgotten to ask the most important question. What did she want now? Not what her parents wanted. Not what David wanted. Not even what the old Paige had wanted. What did she, this woman sitting here right now, want for her life? Paige looked at her sculptures. Really looked at them. They were extraordinary. They showed vision, skill, passion. Looking at them, she felt something stir inside her. A whisper of recognition, not of memory but of self. This was who she was. Not a lawyer. Not David's wife. Not her parents' perfect daughter. An artist. A creator. Someone who chose her own path. And Leo had seen that in her when no one else had. Leo had encouraged her, believed in her, loved her for who she truly was, not who she was supposed to be. She'd lost her memory of him, but that didn't mean she had to lose him entirely. Memory wasn't the only foundation for love. Choice was. The old Paige had chosen Leo once. Maybe the new Paige could choose him again, not because she remembered their past, but because she could see the truth of who she was and who he was, and recognize that they fit. Paige stood up, decision crystallizing. She'd been living in the past, trying to fit back into a life that had never really fit in the first place. It was time to choose her own future. She pulled out her phone and called Leo. It rang 4 times and she thought he might not answer. Then his voice, cautious and guarded, "Paige? Can we talk?" she asked. "Please? I need to tell you something." They met at the park where Leo had proposed, the first time. Paige arrived first, nervous, rehearsing what she wanted to say. When Leo appeared, walking slowly toward her, she saw the caution in his posture, the way he held himself back. She'd hurt him by pulling away, by choosing her old life. He was protecting himself now, and she didn't blame him. "Thanks for meeting me," Paige started. "Of course," Leo said quietly. They sat on a bench, carefully maintaining distance between them. Paige took a breath. "I went to the apartment today." "Our apartment?" "I found my journal." Leo's expression flickered with surprise. "I read the whole thing," Paige continued. 5 years of entries. And Leo, the woman who wrote those entries, she was happy. Really, genuinely happy. She'd found her passion, found her purpose, found love. Real love, not the obligated kind. "I know," Leo said softly. "I was there." "I still don't remember," Paige admitted, and watched him deflate slightly. "I don't remember meeting you or falling in love or building our life. Those memories might never come back." "I know," Leo repeated, his voice heavy with resignation. "But here's what I realized," Paige said, turning to face him fully. "Memory isn't the only thing that matters. Maybe it's not even the most important thing. Leo looked at her, confusion and hope warring on his face. The woman I was made choices, Paige explained. She chose to leave a life that looked perfect but felt empty. She chose to pursue art even though everyone said it was foolish. She chose you even though it was difficult and scary and meant giving up security. She was brave, Leo said, his eyes filling with tears. She was honest, Paige corrected. She was finally honest with herself about who she was and what she wanted. And I think I've been dishonest. I've been hiding behind my amnesia, using it as an excuse to go back to what's safe and familiar. But safe isn't the same as right. What are you saying? Leo asked carefully. I'm saying I looked at my sculptures today, really looked at them. And they're good, Leo. They're really good. That woman, the one I can't remember being, she was talented. She had vision. She created beautiful things. You still are her, Leo said. The talent didn't disappear with the memories. Maybe, Paige said. But I've been so focused on trying to remember who I was, I forgot to figure out who I am now. Who I want to be now. She pulled something from her pocket, the wedding ring Leo had left on the coffee shop table weeks ago. I don't remember marrying you, she said, holding the ring. I don't remember our life together. I can't promise that I'll ever remember. Leo's face showed his pain, but he nodded. But I read my journal, Paige continued, and I saw my sculptures. I saw photos of us together. I saw evidence of a woman who was living authentically for the first time in her life. And when I compare that life to the one I've been trying to go back to, there's no comparison. She paused, gathering courage. David proposed to me last week. Big diamond ring, fancy restaurant, everyone watching. It was everything I thought I wanted. Leo's face went pale, but Paige continued quickly. And I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. He's a good man, he's successful, he checks all the boxes my parents care about. But when he kissed me, I felt empty. When I'm with him, I feel like I'm playing a role in someone else's life. Paige. Let me finish, she said gently. Then I thought about the sculpture I made for you. The one called Chosen. I thought about what that word means. David didn't choose me, I was just the logical next step in his plan. My parents didn't choose who I really was, they chose who they wanted me to be. She held up the ring. But you chose me. The real me. The messy, artistic, unconventional me. You chose me when it was hard, when everyone said it was foolish, when it meant struggling financially. You chose me. Tears were streaming down Leo's face now. I can't promise I'll remember our past, Paige said, her own voice breaking. But I can choose our future. I can choose to get to know you again. I can choose to see where this goes. I can choose to be honest about who I am instead of who I'm supposed to be. Are you sure? Leo asked, hardly daring to hope. I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't want you to choose me because of what's in a journal or because you feel guilty. I'm choosing you because when I'm at my parents' house, I feel like I'm suffocating, Paige interrupted. But when I'm in our apartment, surrounded by my art, I feel like I can breathe. I'm choosing you because you believed in me when no one else did. I'm choosing you because I want to be the woman who made those sculptures, who wrote those journal entries, who was brave enough to live authentically. She held out the ring to him. I'm choosing you because I want to fall in love with you again. Not remember falling in love. Actually fall in love, here and now, as the person I am today. Leo took the ring with shaking hands. You mean it? I mean it, Paige said firmly. I want to start over. I want to date you properly, get to know you, build something new. I can't promise it'll be the same as what we had before. I don't want the same, Leo said, suddenly smiling through his tears. I want whatever we can build together now. New memories. New choices. New everything. So this is like a first date? Paige asked, smiling tentatively. If you want it to be, Leo said. Hi, I'm Leo. I produce music, I love jazz, and I think you're the most interesting person I've ever met. Paige laughed, a real laugh, spontaneous and joyful. I'm Paige. I'm apparently a sculptor, though I'm still getting used to that idea. And I'd really like to get to know you better. Leo held out his hand. Would you like to take a walk? I could show you some of my favorite places in the city. Places we used to go together, but we can make new memories of them. Paige took his hand. The touch sent a small spark through her, not memory, but possibility. I'd like that. They walked through the park together, talking. Leo told her about his work, his dreams, his fears. Paige told him about the confusion she'd been feeling, the pressure from her parents, the emptiness of her old life. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I'm making another mistake? What if I choose this path and regret it? Then we'll figure it out together, Leo said simply. That's what partnership is, not having all the answers, but facing the questions together. As the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, they sat on the same bench where Leo had proposed years ago. Paige looked at him, really looked at him, and felt something bloom in her chest. Not memory, but recognition. This felt right in a way nothing else had. Can I kiss you? Leo asked softly. Yes, Paige whispered. When their lips met, Paige didn't remember their first kiss or their wedding or 5 years of kisses. But she felt something new, hope, possibility, connection. The beginning of something that could grow into love. They pulled apart slowly, and Leo rested his forehead against hers. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For choosing me again. For giving us another chance. Thank you for being patient, Paige said. For loving me enough to let me go, so I could choose to come back. They sat together as darkness fell, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing. Making new memories to replace the ones that were lost. It wouldn't be easy. Paige would have to face her parents' disappointment again. She'd have to reject David's proposal formally. She'd have to figure out how to restart her art career. She'd have to build a relationship with a man she didn't remember but was choosing to love. But for the first time since the accident, Paige felt certain about something. She was choosing her own path. She was being honest about who she was and what she wanted. She was choosing love, not the comfortable, obligated kind, but the brave, authentic kind. And that choice, more than any memory, felt like coming home. So what did we learn from Paige and Leo's story? We learned that memory isn't the only thing that makes us who we are. Paige lost 5 years of memories, but she didn't lose herself. The talent was still there. The capacity for courage was still there. The ability to choose authentically was still there. We learned that love is more than just remembering. It's choosing. Every single day, despite difficulties, despite what others say, despite fears and doubts, love is a choice. Paige made that choice once when she left her old life for Leo. She made it again when she chose to come back to him, even without her memories. We learned that the life we're supposed to live isn't always the life we're meant to live. Sometimes the path that looks safe and comfortable is actually a prison. Sometimes the path that looks risky and foolish is actually the one that leads us home to ourselves. We learned that other people's expectations, even from people who love us, can't tell us who we should be. Only we can decide that. Paige's parents wanted her to be a lawyer, to marry David, to live a certain kind of life. But that wasn't her truth. Her truth was in her art, her passion, her authentic choices. And we learned that second chances are possible, even when everything seems lost. Paige and Leo lost 5 years of memories, but they didn't lose each other. They found each other again in a different way, building something new on the foundation of choice rather than memory. Because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Not whether we remember every moment, but whether we choose to be present in this moment. Not whether we've loved before, but whether we're brave enough to love now. The question isn't, can someone who forgets you fall in love with you again? The real question is, are you both brave enough to choose each other over and over, no matter what challenges come your way? For Paige and Leo, the answer was yes. And that choice, that brave, honest, authentic choice, that's what made their love story real. Not the memories they'd lost, but the future they chose to build together. Memory may fade. Circumstances may change. Life may throw unimaginable challenges at us. But the power to choose who we are, who we love, how we live, that power remains. And sometimes, that choice is the most powerful force of all. So if you're facing your own crossroads, your own choice between what's expected and what's authentic, remember Paige's story. Remember that the bravest thing you can do is choose truth over comfort, choose authenticity over approval, choose love over fear. Because in the end, we're not defined by what we remember. We're defined by what we choose. And that choice? That's yours to make.